more flour than what you really need.
These adult leaders are receiving some final instructions before this entire company hits the trail for a very special trek. This youth activity for local members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints commemorates and celebrates those pioneers who traveled west pushing and pulling handcarts.
I hope they'll have appreciation for their heritage, the things that the members in the early days went through, the sacrifices that they made. You know, they have great sacrifices that they need to make today. These are different. I think it'll help them to appreciate those things. It will also appreciate the things they have at home today, you know, the air conditioning, their comforts that they enjoy. And so we look forward to being with them and just enjoying their company. And hopefully it's a time, we've got some times that are for spiritual preparation as well, and for them to ponder and meditate upon the things that they've been given.
In the mid-1800s, the Mormon pioneers began their exodus west to escape religious persecution, mob violence, and even an extermination order in Missouri. 7 companies of these pioneers crossed the Midwest and Rocky Mountains with only handcarts.
The decision was made in 1855, 1856, that there had to be a quicker and a cheaper way to get immigrants from Europe to converts from Europe to Utah. The only way they could do that was to simplify the number of carts and wagons and whatnot, the equipment that they were taking. There was a decision that was made in '56 to take immigrants by handcart if they couldn't afford to go any other way. The handcart trek that we're doing here is now basically an experiential thing for kids to get a taste of what it was like to walk 1,700 miles across Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, and into Utah, pulling a handcart. Now, it's not a faithful reproduction. We're not doing everything according to the book, but we're trying to give them an ability and a taste of what that was like.
3,000 pioneers migrated west in the 7 handcart companies. 8% did not make it to Salt Lake City. Many of those who perished belonged to the Martin and Willie companies, which got a late start in July and were then trapped by winter weather. The handcart pioneers were allowed only 15 pounds of bedding and clothing, and by sheer physical exertion, traveled between 17 and 30 miles a day.
There were typically one family to a cart. If there were single people, they would put maybe 5 or 6 single folks together, men in one company, women in another company, or another handcart. They camped in tents. There was usually a wagon that was involved that hauled a series of tents. They had 4 handcarts to a tent, 5 tents to a company, and that had its own captain, and the overall captain was the one that moved them, was almost always somebody who had been across the plains at least twice, usually once either way.
This 3-day, 19-mile trek through Land Between the Lakes is not designed to be a pure reenactment. It is a remembrance and a connection to past sacrifices. There are modern shoes under those dresses, along with sunglasses and plenty of sunblock. But the handcarts are a pretty faithful representation. A little better in materials and construction, they are about the same size and weight, with authentic wheels constructed by Amish neighbors. Along with plain old hard work, some other trail experiences will be simulated.
Supper this evening is going to be a cup of broth, beef broth, a roll, maybe a piece of jerky. Tomorrow morning for breakfast, they're going to have cornmeal mush and a piece of fruit. For lunch tomorrow, it'll be a roll and a piece of fruit. Now tomorrow evening, Friday evening, they're going to have a chance to make some stew. Pioneers did do that when they had meat and they came across a supply, they would do that. Have some beef stew and bread, and we're going to have some homemade butter. Saturday morning, we're going to have oatmeal and raisins. Saturday lunch is just going to be trail snacks and maybe a piece of jerky. And then when we get done, at the very end, we're going to step out of pioneer mode and have a big feast. So barbecue and potato salad and beans, stuff like that.
I expect it to be kind of hard and very challenging, and I don't think it'll be fun all the way through, especially when we're pulling the hand carts, but I'm going to try to make the most of it myself.
What do you want to get out of it?
I don't know, some understanding of how much trouble the pioneers went through when they went across this country, and with their families and all their belongings and everything.
Each handcart team includes a married couple who are mom and dad, single young adults as older brothers and sisters, and 3 to 6 kids from 14 to 18 years old. These families are responsible for each other, their handcart, and their belongings.
There's 5 goals we have for the trek. One we just mentioned was we were talking to them. We want them to gain a greater appreciation for their pioneer heritage, what the pioneers went through. Again, this is only be 3 days of walking. Back then, they would take 16 weeks to go the 1,300 miles across the plains. We want them to gain an greater appreciation of the family. They're going to be organized with new folks. We want them to be able to make new friends. That's a third thing. A lot of these kids, Mormon kids, are like other kids. They play video games and watch TV. It's going to be a challenge for them to be walking out in the heat and the weather. We hope that they'll gain a greater bit of self-esteem as they go through this. And the last and probably most important thing, we hope that they gain a greater appreciation, a greater testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
I'm waiting for a good spiritual experience out of all of this, but I know we're going to be sweating a lot, so hopefully not too much.
Before hitting the trail, there's one last shakedown. The kids and the adults dispose of those modern non-essentials like PSPs, MP3s, DVDs, and CDs.
It's awesome. It's a great opportunity to get outside and get away from electronics and stuff that normal people do inside.
You're going to be able to survive 4 days without all your electronics.
I sure hope so. It's hard.
How you doing up there, boys?
Appreciation, gratitude, about what the pioneers did, and just kind of come out and experience it and see what it was like. So,
is it going to be tough?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a lot of hard work, but that's part of it.
Well, I hope they get a feeling for really who they were dealing with. These were not heroes by any stretch. They were just regular men and women who had to make a trip. And so they buckled down and they did it. Sometimes they had a lot of fun. Sometimes they were stalked by tragedy. All of them sacrificed. Most of the companies, because they traveled so light, were in varying stages of starvation by the time they actually arrived. And almost all but one was met by relief wagons coming out of the valley.
I want to have learned what they experienced, how they felt when they went through and had to make the trek, and just a good spiritual experience to get an understanding of how they felt and what they had to go through just for their religion.
As I have done reading about the handcart companies, it's remarkable about how normal these people were. There were people who grumbled. There were people who took advantage of others. But there were many people who made some real sacrifices, genuine sacrifices. They gave up all they had, everything, sold everything that they owned, in order to make the first leg of the journey across the Atlantic Ocean, then by train to Iowa, and then by handcart company, often accompanied by a wagon company or so, to come. These are people who really believed. They were not fanatics by any stretch, but they were serious about what they believed. And I think that is probably what we commemorate more than anything.